Hello everybody, welcome back to my movie review series. Today we'll be discussing The Man from Earth. Just finished watching it. I think this was on Prime Video on like the free just like free viewing, streaming. Just looking for something else new out there, just make some more content. Now I'll start off, we got some good user engagement on my last movie review from yesterday. Obviously I was in a really good mood because again being tortured is always fun. But I went on a walk, feel good, whatever. My life is such a joke. But I just wanted to shout out to the fans loving the movie reviews, Style XELENE, on my Whiplash movie review, and that movie was absolutely terrible. But he says, LOL, this is possibly the worst movie review I have ever seen. So I'm glad the fans are out there loving it. But we'll do the same thing today. I'll give you the overview as presented by Google, other rating systems, what people thought about it, my overall impressions and grade. After my grade is given, you're going to want to shut off the video because there will be spoiler alerts. We'll be discussing the plot synopsis and character development. Similar movie, major themes, not really. In like the sci-fi genre, I think it's decent in terms of maybe getting something, just a script that might be different or have something new or novel or interesting or just some tidbit in the writing that makes me think about something to talk about. And so, this one was released in 2007. It's a sci-fi drama. Has an hour and 27-minute runtime. You can watch it free on Tubi right now. But it says, an impromptu party for a college professor becomes a mysterious interrogation when he reveals to his colleagues that he is thousands of years old. Had a budget of a whopping $200,000. But it was 91% that liked it on Google. It was 10 out of 10 on Plex, whatever that is. 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb. So it says, why to watch on Google, psychological, intriguing, and unpredictable. So overall, it wasn't too intriguing. It wasn't off-putting. Definitely better than yesterday's movie. But you can't really give away the plot. But it's just a going away party for this colleague that he reveals to them that he's really, really old. And you have your typical, pretty much expected reactions, and they just talk about history for about an hour or so. Decently intriguing. It wasn't super novel by any means to me. Nothing really struck out as like wowzers. But it was decently entertaining with the plot development towards the end. So I'll give it a B minus. Decently entertaining on the lower end of entertaining. Could just be blah. But that's what I thought. So if you've not seen it, would like to, you want to shut off the video. There will be spoiler alerts. So you open up and you meet John Oldman. He's just putting boxes. He's got like a Leonardo da Vinci painting or a Picasso painting. He's basically just loading up boxes to his truck, and he's going to. He's leaving his He has a 10-year, not tenure as in like lifetime employment, but a 10-year stint as a professor. And so his colleagues, other professors, you don't get any school, or I don't even think you really get like a physical location in terms of like a state. But certainly in English, in American English, so say it's somewhere in the United States. But John Oldman is just putting stuff away for getting ready to move. And so his colleagues show up and they're like, forgot a character up here. But they're like, we can't leave without saying goodbye. And John is just kind of like trying to go his own way without a big send-off. And so you meet Harry, he's a biologist, Edith, who's a fundamental Christian, Dan, I forget what he is, the black character, Tony Todd, in terms of his profession in the movie. You have Dr. Will Gruber, who's a psychologist who comes later. You have Sandy, who is either a student, but somebody that definitely has feelings for John. And then Linda and Art. Art is a teacher and Linda's a student, and they're clearly dating, so I don't know what kind of relationships going on there. But a rather small cast, low budget movie. But they open up and that's what's going on. So then they're in this kind of, I don't know, this filmed in 2007. You really don't get much on the setting. It's like what time and where it's located. I'm assuming it's relatively modern times to 2007. So he's got a wood-burning fireplace. He's got just different things, and his house is being torn down and getting ready to move. All of his colleagues come over. They're all happy and friendly. And John busts out some Johnny Walker Green. And so very quickly into the movie, like in the first couple of scenes, they all show up, and then John breaks the news to them, and he wants to say goodbye to them as who he really is. And so he says, came from he's about 14,000 years old. And so obviously the reactions are like, are you joking? Is this a hoax? Are you being serious about this? This movie's rated like PG. It said not rated on Google, but I think it said up there like PG. So it's like you maybe say bitch one time. But so it's a pretty non violent or aggressively rated movie. And so they're just, having the typical reactions like, you're clearly joking, I'm not joking. He has this artifact from this Paleolithic era that he says he bought from a thrift shop for 25 cents. He's getting busts out this Johnny Walker Green. They're drinking some liquor, and the obvious so then they just start talking about history. Probably a pretty short review because the plot doesn't really move that much. But just intriguing. I have some decently intriguing. I don't know. But so they're just talking. Harry the biologist is obviously asking him, I'll play along with your game, John. What would it take for somebody to have, lived for 14,000 years? And they just talk about, complete regeneracy of your cells and no deterioration. So obviously that's not true. But again, as a movie, just watching it for a plot, a script, maybe something interesting comes of it. And so Edith, the religious person, she's very off-put the entire time. Harry's kind of intrigued, but doesn't believe him. Edith is aggressively off-put and doesn't believe him. Dan is curious, but tries to be respectful and also doesn't believe him, but not nearly as much as Edith. Sandy, the chick that likes John, believes him the entire time. Art, the guy that's dating the student, pretty early on into the movie, he goes into the other room and he's going to go call a psychiatrist. So Dr. Will Gruber's a psychiatrist to come to see if he's crazy or not. And so they just keep asking him about different things. The move from agriculture, the big extinction period right around 14,000 years ago, or 12 to 14,000 years ago. They ask him about dinosaurs, and it's before my time. They ask him about, has he ever met Buddha? What's this? What's that? And he says he's learned directly from Buddha. When they're walking in, and Edith sees this Pablo Picasso painting. On the back it says something in French. And so he's he talks about how he doesn't know where he's from, because it's it's just been a long time and the geography has changed, or just the buildings or environment has changed. Talks about learning language. He's been a caveman for a long time. He doesn't scar, so again, he can get injured. He's self-proclaimed not a superhero or a Superman or by any means. He just doesn't get old. He just doesn't age. And so they really just go back and forth on that for a while. Again, it kept me intrigued. And Edith the entire time's against him. Harry the biologist kind of goes along with it. But then again, once Art calls Dr. Will Gruber shows up, and then they just keep going back and forth. They debate whether he's on drugs or not. They debate whether he's mentally ill. They debate just if there's any cracks in the stories. He says he's dated some women over the years, but basically he just stays in one place for about 10 years' time until people start saying that he hasn't aged a day, and then that's when he notices that they're going to realize he doesn't age, and so he just packs up and leaves. He says it's just easier to maintain relationships, or to just not have people be aggressive with him. He talks about being in the older times, when maybe he followed some religion at some time because that's what people were doing, and that he hunted with some groups for a while. Again, he came, I think, from Brussels or Belgium. He got arrested in Belgium for one time for a year. He's faked his death a couple times. He has had girlfriends or wives, but he does the same thing where he leaves every 10 years. And again, just the cinematography, again, it's very low budget, so it looks even older than 2007, but that's really what goes on for the majority of the movie. And then so Will Gruber, he at one point, he's very off-put too, and so he's like, what if I pulled out a gun? And he has it's this pipe that he's smoking, literally just a old school kind of tobacco pipe. And then after pulling out the fake gun, he actually pulls out a real gun and points it at John and is like, why don't I just shoot you? See if you don't, let me shoot you in the arm, see if we can watch it heal. And so, or maybe I'll shoot you in the head or whatever. And then he kind of breaks down. Dan tries to step in the way. Will Gruber kind of stops pointing the gun at John and kind of breaks down and leaves the room. That's when you learn that Dr. Will Gruber's wife had passed away yesterday, so you get the characterization of some sort of just jealousy or angst or angriness about his wife dying, and John saying that he can live forever, and the absurdity of all of this. And so John runs outside after Will to kind of like comfort him or whatever. He takes the gun off of him and looks at it's like a 5-round 38 or something, and all of the chambers are empty. So the gun wasn't loaded. Dr. Will Gruber drives off. He thinks for a little bit and drives back. And then he's still, like, this is very absurd. This is very absurd. They go on a little bit back and forth. And then they start asking, did you meet any important religious figures in the Bible? To at which point he's like, I don't scar, and I was Jesus. and he's just like kind of interesting commentary. Again, the Bible is a very little history book with some anecdotes and allegories, as we covered in the book club. Haven't done that in a while just because, fuck it, I don't know why. But because nobody watches anything I do besides everyone stealing it, and I just don't care. But regardless, Edith now has a huge breakdown to this, but he's just like, let me see your wrist. He's like, I don't scar. And he just says basically the reason there was nothing mythical, magical about it. He was just trained his body to, he's up on his cross, trained his breathing, and his vital signs dropped down. And then when they took him off the cross because they thought he was dead, and then his vital signs picked back up as he trained his body, and then he went out of the tomb, and that's why they think he resurrected from the dead, is just because he didn't die. Did Jesus actually die on the cross? I believe so, and I think the resurrection is just saying, our hero lives. But that could be moderately historically accurate, where Jesus didn't actually die on the cross, but he died several hours later in the tomb. Ain't nobody resurrected, that's for sure. And so Edith has a big breakdown. They go back and forth about this, and Will Gruber's now back at the house, and they're all kind of get upset again. Dan's more of like trying to be accepting but doubting it. Sandy, the one that likes him or loves him, tells him she loves him. She's the only one that really believes him the entire time. Art and Linda. Linda doesn't really have much of an opinion. Art's off put, and yeah. But Harry's still trying to have like a good time with it, having fun with it. And so he basically tells them he's Jesus, and then there's nothing surprising about it. There's no wise men, blah, 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 blah. So after that, they're kind of all just like, he can't be serious. They're all kind of, the characterizations were all they're kind of intrigued, they're never going to believe it. And so he's just like, I gotcha. I was just joking the whole time. And so they're like, oh, Edith, because they were good work colleagues for 10 years. And so they're all like, oh, you got us. That wasn't a funny hoax. You played with our emotions. At which point, again, Sandy's she's not buying it. She's just like, he's clearly just, diffusing the situation. And so Harry leaves. He drives Edith home. Dan leaves. Art and Linda leave. And they do have some of the minors. There's a couple movers come into the scenes when they're talking about all this stuff, but they play a very minor role. And so basically all that's left is John talking with Sandy, she was clear that he was just diffusing the situation, and then Dr. Will Gruber coming out from behind him. And Sandy's asking him like, do you always play on names like jokes like John Oldman? He's like, I've gone by John Paleo, like Paleolithic. I've gone by John Partee or something. At which point Dr. Will Gruber hears that, and then he realizes that was his dad. And so John is Dr. Will Gruber's dad. Dr. Will has a heart attack and dies. And kind of like the last scene is him and Sandy like putting his son, John's son, into an ambulance. And Sandy being like, you've never seen one of your kids die, have you? And he was like, no. And so he finishes packing up. He's in the car. Sandy's still at the house. They're the last ones left. John starts to drive away, then stops the car, and Sandy walks toward the car. Clearly going to continue on a relationship, even though they're not going to be able to live. Sandy will not be able to live forever. So I thought, again, a decent kind of plot twist. Again, I really didn't see the Jesus angle coming, and I really didn't see the Dr. Will Gruber thing was kind of predictable. But I just, again, the Jesus part and then the Dr. Will Gruber was decently, again, plot development decent for someone who watches a movie every single day. So I don't know. It was only an hour and 20 some minutes. So it was a short run time, decently entertaining, nothing super novel or unique, but decent enough to not be as bad as Whiplash yesterday. So, thank you for watching my movie review on The Man from Earth, and I will see you on the next one.